Can you hear us? Angela,
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So
Maybe unmute myself.
no, you don't have to. You don't have to unmute you.
All right. Evening. It is 5:01, and I'd like to call this meeting of the Beaufort County Board of Education Academic Committee to order. It is November 30th. We are in conference room E. This is a remote hybrid meeting. In the room, attending personally are Colonel Dyer, Mel Campbell, myself, Kathy Robine, and Angela Middleton is zooming in. Those are the committee members. Also in the room are attorney Wendy Cutledge, Jillian Rowland, Dr. Gary Spados, and Robert Cushionberry.
You're not related to Larry.
No, maybe they did wrong.
So at this time, request for public comment participation will be accepted between 4 and 4:30 by sending an email with your name, phone number, and top Robin Cushionberry at Beaufort.k12.sc.us. You will receive a phone call during public comments. I understand that we have 2 people lined up for public comments. At this point, please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag,
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
Madam Chair, move that we approve the agenda for this meeting on November 30th, 2022 of the Academics Committee.
Right? Colonel Dyer, seconded. Any discussion? None? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Middleton, aye.
That's 4-0. The agenda is approved. Okay. Robin, we are. Kills me.
Did you mute your computer?
I did. And it bounces back. Oh, this is on right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, what do I need to get the phone from?
Oh, sure, absolutely. You want me to look at the computer?
I'm stopping from. Zoom is not on.
Well, Angela, I have you on speaker. You're calling in for public comments.
Oh, yes, Ms. Cushionberry, thank you. As Ms. Cushionberry mentioned, this is Angela Rosillo. Thank you guys for allowing public comment. I wanted to call and ask if there would be a review committee for material for not only the new health curriculum, but for other subjects as well. I would think ELA and library books be reviewed before being placed, but as recent events have shown, that's not been the case. Thank you.
All right. That's it?
Yes, ma'am, that's it. Short and sweet tonight.
All right. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is the Google Assistant. Can I ask what you're calling about?
Hello, Dave.
Hi, Dave. This is Robin. I'm calling you for public comments. You have 3 minutes and you're on speakerphone.
Okay, thank you very much. This is David Cook. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members. Thanks for giving me a chance to speak. Speaking to you tonight of the new committees. I've estimated upon completing and reviewing the 4 books requested by ELA teachers in our district, approximately 160 to 180 hours of work will be consumed. Why is that? Because someone didn't do their job in the first place. But no one will really tell us. Maybe the about this or speaking to the island packet that explains the books got in the schools in the first place. How did they get there? Who brought them in? And who's responsible for approving them and selecting the books? We don't need names of employees, maybe the staff position. No one that works in our school districts or lives in our community can tell me that depictions of rape, incest, premarital sex of any kind, pedophilia, and sex slavery are literary works that are good for children to read. No one in this district can tell me that as a literary work exceeds the damage that will occur to a minor who is exposed to this material. There are billions of works that could replace these books. Moving forward, I'd like the academic committee to direct the board to direct the district to revise IS 38.1 to include the following language. Any challenge submitted with the initial complaint of a material that is subject to federal and or state law as dissemination of obscene material to minors is not subject to review due to its legality and exposure to criminal charges to district and its staff. If given to a minor under the age of 18, I will email that language to you a little bit later today. This would cover all materials, school libraries, classroom libraries, and curriculum. Can you please ask the board to remind the superintendent and his staff, specifically the teachers and school staff that are desiring to keep material unsuitable for minors, to start acting like there's children in the schools? Because I'm sure that none of these teachers would blindly send their child to my home if I told them I was going to be reading to their kids without explaining to the parents what I'd be reading. There are children in these buildings, and maybe the people in the buildings need to be reminded those children belong to families. The students in the classrooms are not their children. My family and I are truly thankful for all of your hard work, and I don't want any of you to forget that. You all have our respect for what you do and the sacrifices that you make to help support our school district. As a parent, I'm simply here to provide you with feedback and give you insight as to how we see things as parents and what's happening to our children. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is approval of the September 28th committee meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the September 28th, 2022 committee meeting minutes.
Second,
Second.
Mel Campbell seconds. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 And I.
That's 4-0. The minutes are approved. Okay, moving down on our agenda. The first item on our agenda tonight is the administrative regulations. The first one is IS 26, medical homebound instruction.
Dr. White, was Ms. Murray going to discuss this, or would you like me to discuss this?
Ms. Murray's on her way to a training, so you can discuss and I'll jump in when I need to.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you, members of the board and staff. The reason that we've made some updates to this document is because we now have a student service officer who, and this falls under her jurisdiction. Additionally, there have been some changes to documents. We now have a medical homebound physician authorization form. We changed that language. We changed the language from the director of student services to the student services officer. And also under H, the school principal or his or designee shall contact the student service officer or his or designee for assistance. And then Ms. Murray explained to us that attendance codes had changed, as you'll see there, and Roman number N letter N, SCHMBD, those are certain, I guess you would call them abbreviations that are used for attendance code. And then in O and P, again, it says student service officer. And Ms. Murray explained to us, R, which is on page 4, that the homebound travel form is now submitted electronically through the Muse voucher. So those were changes that needed to be made. And we also added our new coherent governance manual policy so that they're included.
Campbell, did you want to bring up your question?
Yeah. H. Just mentioned.
Uh-huh.
I don't, can't read that, they kind of appearancy.
It doesn't really make sense.
Stand.
Dr. White, can you explain the process for obtaining an instructor for homebound services and what procedure your staff uses? Maybe.
So, yeah. So, teachers exist, 1 second. Can you hear me? Yes. So existing teachers apply through HR for homebound instructors. The schools are provided a list of those instructors and who will be available. And they are to the homebound coordinators for each school will make contact then for the homebound instructor. There are instances where the schools may have difficulty finding a homebound instructor, so they'll reach out to our office to assist with that as well.
So if you look at, if I may, yeah, if you look at number H, that letter H,
Okay.
first thing it says is the student services officer or his or her designee shall designate an instructor for the homebound student. But then it says if the SSO is unable to locate an instructor.
So I see. Yeah. So that should read that the school homebound coordinator shall designate an instructor for the homebound student, and if he or she is unable to locate an instructor within 3 days, then the school principal or the designee will contact the student officer or his or her designee. So it should read the school principal or his or her designee shall designate an instructor, should be the first sentence.
Wait a minute, I thought you said school homebound coordinator.
Well, I'm keeping it consistent with what you have below, which says principal or his or her designee, which will be the homebound coordinator. Yeah, just keeping it consistent, the language.
Okay.
Thank you. I missed that one.
Not sure I have it.
Okay.
Give me, I understand the process, but I'm not sure I understand the language that we just agreed on.
Principal and student services officer.
Where-
First.
Should be first.
Yeah, instead of student services.
Instead of the school homebound coordinator, where does that go?
Right here.
Yeah,
That is to be principal and what is
The
it?
principal or his or her designee.
so take that out. The principal or his or her designee shall designate an instructor for the homebound student.
Correct.
If he or she is unable to locate an instructor within 3 days, the principal shall contact student services officer for assistance.
Correct.
So you're not putting any language in there about the school homebound coordinator.
So the designee at the school is the homebound coordinator.
Okay, all right.
That's somebody.
Yeah, that's-
Thank you, Dr.
That's
White.
not that, that's clarify who does what.
Yeah. Okay, Colonel Geyer or Ms. Middleton, any questions on IS 26?
I don't have any questions.
And by the way, happy birthday, Dr. White.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, Mr. Campbell has additional questions on this.
Sure.
For, I see the attendance changes. The pay. That a part of this, and maybe that's not a question for Dr. White, but how we pay the homebound teacher Is that relevant to this?
Yeah, that should be an HR.
That's in HR.
Yes, in HR.
So why is it here?
What are you asking again? Which
F,
number are you looking at?
P, that's
No, it's R.
P and R, right? Yeah, P is also relevant to the P.
Given the, Dr. White, it's given the procedure for payment for the homebound instructor. And the question is this an appropriate placement for salary? Or is that just an internal event, right? That we know that that operates within HR versus within the SS, this AR.
Procedural.
So I'm trying to follow visually where you're reading so I can answer that.
Really,
Can you see P on the
I
screen?
can see P. Mm-hmm.
P on, right?
Yeah.
So you want P and then,
Q-R.
and
Mm-hmm.
then
I got
go
P.
T.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's Q and R.
Mm-hmm.
In the original,
It was.
yes.
And
Yeah.
And we lost that.
Just a procedure.
it's just a, but it's listed,
Yeah.
but the
Just
title
because
says
it's done,
internal homebound
But-
process and procedures.
But this is just a procedure that says they have to fill out.
That instruction.
it's about instruction, yeah.
Understand?
This ain't about pay, I mean, in my mind.
For part of providing the instruction, and then the parent has to verify the instruction took place when it's in home. So this is where they're signing that form, and the parents have to verify that, and then that's submitted to us. So that's part of the process.
Oh,
Hey, it don't matter. Just wanted to make sure.
oh, okay.
And to me, it makes sense. I'm a little higher here, I think, but the AR, the purpose of the AR is for any school that has a homebound student to pick this up and say, let's make sure that we're following it, right? And so the procedure in here about how the people get paid and works, I think it's
It
okay.
helps the school.
It helps
It
the
does help the
schools
school.
to keep everything consistent.
Yeah, and also if you're a new principal, you're trying to get guidance.
That's just my 2 cents.
Mhm.
No, you okay with that?
No, but I mean, I think there should be someone in that school that's definitely in charge of all the payment of every person there. And including that homebound,
And educating the homebound person of their responsibility.
yes,
I get it.
but, yeah,
But if they don't follow,
but that's fine with me, I'm not gonna, we're not gonna butt head because of that.
but by having it documented. if they
I
don't
just wanna
follow
make
the
sure that you begin to be consistent with all of these special,
Yeah.
situations where a person is sure. And you can look at that area and see how assistant coaches are being paid. And
Yeah,
other
yeah,
people,
yeah, yeah.
Yes, you understand?
Right.
Yes, yes.
anyhow,
Okay.
okay, that's.
Right, do we have that
Move
stipulation
forward.
relevant? Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so we made the changes to H and we'll send it back out to feedback.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
All right, the next one, SS3, assignment of students to schools.
So Dr. White, go ahead and explain about your changes and your rationale so everybody knows.
Okay, so SS3, assignment to schools, a lot of the changes were again to be consistent with the responsibilities of student services and the change from the chief instructional officer to the student services officer. Also on that first page, bullet 3, just be consistent, students with disabilities and not special needs is more of the language of choice and preference. Now, so just making that language consistent. Also having the AR to flow a little bit better. So we see that we struck through item D and actually moved that to another portion towards the end of the AR that you'll see in a few minutes as well. Again, when we talk about item B with looking at the membership of a committee for the health hardship as one of the reasons someone can request to be transferred, we use a special circumstances committee to look at that. So we just wanted to make sure that people understand it wasn't the decision of one person, but a committee which can comprise of certain members as well. Special circumstances, again, just elaborating that process and what that looks like, and under what conditions a parent can request a special circumstance request. Also to talk about the appeal decision must be done in writing, and it's in accordance with section 14, that's 16, sorry, reading my numerals, and section 5 as well. And just making that clear there. Employee courtesy, just consistency with the language again. We use employee courtesy and not preference, so just making that a little bit consistent as well. And as far as expectations, making sure that schools are using and looking at multi-tier system of supports to when they're talking about conduct and attendance and academics of reassigning students. If a student's attending a school out of zone, it's not good enough for the school just to say, okay, we're going to send them back because they violated a code of conduct. But what interventions and strategies, like any student, regardless of school residency, did they put in place, and to really look at that holistically as well. And that's going in line with where we're heading as far as using multi-tier system of supports for all students across the district. And those were the major changes. Like we saw, special circumstances were at the end, and we just put it up further in the document for a better flow of information. And those were the major changes.
And then we added the new policies because the new coherent governance manuals and everything.
I think we're gonna need a page that lists all of our acronyms. A new one has shown up here, the SCC, the Special Circumstances Committee. I know, we have a lot of those, don't we? Any questions? For Guy or no?
No.
Mr. Campbell?
No, ma'am.
You?
Okay.
And Robin, do we need to make I can't, I can never
Not on
remember.
the ARs, we don't have to.
We don't have to make a
But you
motion.
don't, because you're not accepting them, they're just notifying you about the
Right.
updates for
Yeah.
information, specific information.
Yes.
And these go in copies of these would be just.
We'll put them in board docs under the committee,
Yeah.
but it won't go
Yeah,
on the
that's
agenda.
right. Okay. All right, so
Thank you,
next on the agenda is SS 28, pregnant students.
How many do we have here?
Yeah. Do we know, do we keep track?
That would be a number you'd be very interested in.
Probably confidential.
Yeah. Yeah, but right, it's a house.
Abstain.
Jump with that. Yeah.
This is just in case.
Okay, SS 28.
All right,
I'm
so
not looking at any.
we have revised this administrative regulation to provide for
Instead of.
care for our students, pregnant students with children, and married students. And now this falls under Dr. White as a student service officer. We want to make sure that when our students are out to have their baby, that we work with them to make sure that they're able to still complete the work they need to do. And you all may remember about a year or so ago, we had that lactation law that was passed for South Carolina about providing a safe place and a private place to express milk for new mothers. And so we wanted to add that information because it's very important that mothers have the opportunity to express milk. It's very healthy for the baby.
We do that for staff as well.
Yeah, then we already had that,
Yeah.
so we actually put it in here, and then we added in the Office of Civil Rights has actually issued discrimination based on pregnancy related conditions in October of 2022. added in our board's programs cover manual policies. We're gonna have to develop this. And it's been very, I would just say it's been very wonderful, the number of our teachers and other staff that have come back after having their children, and it's worked out very well for the foundation to grant for those mothers. We're pleased about everyone cooperating. It is the Lord.
Any questions about this administrative right?
I have a question. Do young women that who are pregnant, do they qualify for homebound services?
Yes.
As part of the leave procedure?
Yes, and we have an actual separate homebound authorization form just for pregnant women students.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. White, thank you and your team for all your work on this to make it better for our students.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I have a stupid question. Stupid question is, what about the father if he's a student?
If they're allowed to have leave as well, as they do in FMLA. I haven't researched that component of it.
But we haven't had a request for that. That's what we would do, because fathers are allowed to have leave too.
Right, and on the FMLA they are.
Yes, they.
Okay.
Most important thing for us is to work with whatever we can do to support the family.
But I think we need to update the principals on this one. I suppose.
Yes.
I think that's very.
Can we
important.
do that at our
Because I-
principals meeting?
Yes, we would have to.
Well, I mean,
That's
we'll
what
do
we're gonna
that,
take up
but
the work on your-
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Agenda's done.
we work it out.
Yeah.
But now, we're gonna open a can of worms there for sure.
It says students.
You have to be tied with the pregnant mother. The school. Okay, I'm up.
Yeah.
My girlfriend is pregnant and she's in New Jersey, but I'm going to school there.
Yeah.
To do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. You.
We've only had one student address this, but they took adult education, so young lady. I believe we had one young lady filled that, which took a pathway around it. And as you put that question, I recall reading some young ladies.
All right,
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
thank you. Now we're on to the OEs. OE 13, discipline.
Okay, yes, that's me, right? So this is my first OE presentation to you all. I have really no concept of how it goes, so I am going to do the best I can and answer any questions. I felt like we spent quite some time in the last couple of board meetings talking about discipline and sharing that with you. But OE 13, discipline, that policy reads, the superintendent shall establish and consistently enforce discipline policies to maintain safe and effective environments for all students. And we interpret that to mean that we will pretty much adhere to the execution of the discipline hearing processes. We are going to ensure that all schools follow the board policies relating to discipline, as well as the South Carolina Department of Education policies outlining those. When it comes to safe and effective environments, which kind of ties into OE 14 somewhat too, when we talk about safe learning environment, we know that we're going to operate schools that provide both the physical and emotional safety for all our students and staff, while creating a positive school climate to help create that environment that really nurtures learning and achievement. So based on that, I kind of took the approach into, there were 7 specific OEs under this one, and kind of grouped them that made sense in my world, in my mind. And the first one is in the area of governance, really that we know that our student discipline is governed by the laws, both federal, state laws, regulations, and our BCSD administrative regulations as well. And so one of the things as we were going through this process and looking at our student code of conduct and our progressive discipline plan, We know that the last time there was a deep dive into updating, that was when I first got here. Both Dr. Stratus and I first got here in 2019 when a large committee was assembled. So given all the feedback that we've been receiving, especially coming back out of COVID and stuff, it is time that we start to have a big review like that. So we are in the process of assembling a team of stakeholders to include students, to make sure that their voice is heard as well, and administrators and community members to look at our AR. And it is the intent that we should have anticipation implementation timeline for this is to have this ready to go by the 2023-24 school year as well. And as you saw today with the other ARs, we really review those and update you as often as we can whenever we have changes to our regulations. Then we looked at really looking at consistency of discipline practices. A couple of the OEs under here spoke to ensuring that we interpret them with good judgment and also that there's consistency in how they're implemented across the district as well. So our Director of Student Success really monitors the district discipline data on a consistent basis, and all principals do that as part of their school-wide process to look at data, not only academic data, but discipline truancy data as well. And we monitor that. And from our department, we can target our support to individual schools. Dr. Skies has gone out, quite frankly, I've just gone out and met also with the Vail Branch Middle School MTSS coordinator, talk about that. They have, you can see from one of the attachments you received, we're doing so much professional development around trauma-informed services, best practices. We've collaborated with instructional services as well. Karen McKenzie and I've done some work around classroom management to teachers as well. And we're collaborating with the NTSS process as well. We've done some targeted professional development with principals and administrators and their assistant principals. As we hired 2 new hearing officers back in February, we have also done some training around how the hearing process works and what should be done in notifying parents in a timely manner as well, and really trying to make sure there is consistency across that, the district. And then move into discipline interventions. We talked a little bit when I met with you all last week about our multi-tier system of supports. Dr. Skies and Carrie McKenzie shared with the entire board, but really looking at what are those things that we can do and schools can do to ensure that our student needs are met. And you know that they're all based on individualized nature of them when you go through the tier system. And there are some exceptions to the rule when there are some safe school violations that we know of. That Sky's done a really good job of the MTSS webpage, internal webpage for our schools to go and look at and to also continue to train and build a capacity around behavior as well. Last year, there were 199 behavior plans in place, and that is growing as we start to have a really focus on trying to be a little bit more proactive than reactive with our students as well. Our parents are really informed about discipline expectations, both on our website, our code of conduct, and individual schools handbook as well. And we are partnered with some of our community agencies to really making sure we talk about mental health as part of that process with our students as well. Are there any questions?
199 behavioral MTSS plans.
Last year, yes. Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that 199 individuals had a personal plan developed for them?
Yes, had a personal plan developed for them in schools. Mm-hmm.
Because I could read this as there we have a menu of 199 behavioral managers. And I said, no, I can't be. But I think it's clearly stated at what it is.
Student plans.
Yeah, behavior plans for students, 199, yes.
Yes. So
we have about 21,000 students, right?
So 199 student behavior plans would help me understand.
Yes, I'll make that addition.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mel?
I'm concerned with where we're going with this. I mean, this discipline processes, in my mind, old and outdated in terms of today's world. And, contract for behavior. I mean, where's the process in terms of the modern student? That's what my concern would be. As you plan your teamwork and the futuristic, look at discipline, is it gonna look the same way as it has?
Right. No, I don't think so. It shouldn't. When we talk about, I'm making sure I heard you correctly, so I'm just going to repeat for clarity purposes. You said that, you said behavior contracts or plans. What were the terms you used?
I want to know what your behavior, what the plans are for discipline, not necessarily that contract with individual students. That's an outline.
I got you. So as far as discipline goes, and one of the things that all schools have, when you talk about best practices and looking at it, all schools should have a school-wide system, right? And what that looks like, and that goes all the way down from the school. What are the expectations for behavior in different settings in the school? And that trickles back down into the classroom with the teacher then establishing their own systems within that as well. One of the things that we have done, and this district has been very fortunate, we have a lot of support in schools, right? We have behavior management specialists, we have school psychologists, we have school social workers, we have interventionists and stuff. And if you can see from all of the training we've done, we're really trying to get those folks to build their internal capacity to really meet the unique and challenging behaviors of our students. Go ahead.
That's ideal, but my question to you is, how do you know when that is meeting your expectations and needs from an individual standpoint? How do you know that?
So let's
pick a site.
Yeah.
Battery Creek High School. How do you know that they have determined, a good system for monitoring and managing the discipline there, and it meets what the district expects at Battery Creek?
So for example, and it's funny you pick Battery Creek, or part of some of our team members are actually going out, I think this week to meet with Battery Creek staff. We sit down, we talk about those expectations, and we monitor the data. We look at the discipline referrals. We have access to go into educators' handbook on a regular basis. And if we start to see some outliers and stuff, we go back to them and they have that conversation. One of the other things too, they have to do, each school does what we call data conversations, where Dr. Stratus and all of us hear that. So they present that data to us as well. And based on the trends we're seeing there, we go back in and say, hey, you need to update this. This person's not responding. For example, if we saw Mel Campbell had 20 disciplinary infractions, right? And we went in and looked at that data. Well, 19 of them was still in room B. Then we tell the administrators, you need to look at what's happening in room B. Why is that such? Where most of them are coming there. Some kids, it may be transition. So what can your teachers do to help with the transition and the behaviors in the hallway? And so we do that. We do monitor and we do go into specific schools and provide that targeted support. And we've done that already this year with some schools. I can tell you 5 schools that we've already said that we're going back in and having some conversations and helping them deal with the challenges that they have.
The conversation, and that's the conversation I would expect. Then the next thing now is I want to know who's responsible for what. So have the conversation, but I mean, you're not expected from the district to have the conversation with 32 administrators about what they need to do specifically in each of those schools.
So,
or are you going to do that?
so
Because if you do that, that's a lot of work.
Dr. White, speak on
Go
the
ahead.
work. You want to speak on the work that Dr. Skaggs and his team actually with regard to where Mr. Campbell is going to on the work that they do with that data and analysis and the comparative if their interventions are working?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought I tried to explain just now, but yeah.
She did do that. But I still
Would they
want,
go to all the schools?
yeah, I don't want an administrator to leave, let's say Battery Creek High School, that's where we started. And it's left with you holding the bag up here and
Oh, no,
nobody at
no.
the site understands the finer details of the adjustments
Yeah.
that's needed.
So I get you. So no, we're providing that support. And then also we share, we have that layer of the executive directors as well. And we share what those expectations are with them as well. And so they in their meetings can help hold them accountable for what needs to be done and the follow through at the school sites.
Good.
Mhm.
I trust you.
Well, part of it as well is that the executive directors work with the principals with their upbeat data.
Mhm.
So part of climate, obviously, it's discipline as well. So they're working very close with monitoring and keeping that climate. It's.
Yeah.
it's a whole
Right.
issue.
And one of the other processes we use are those, Dr. Stratus, help me with the term, I just drew a blank. Our walkthroughs. I know that's not what we call them.
Instructional reviews.
Thank you. Instructional reviews. So a part of the instructional reviews, especially like you said, Mr. Campbell, when we have some schools that we know we need to really be tight, we make sure someone from my team is on there and we go in with a lens of looking for those things as well and having those questions for the instructional review teams to look at as well. So that is another, and we do quite a few of those each semester. So that's another layer that we're having. And like I said, there are some conversations we have to have about some of the data that we're seeing recently coming out of some schools.
I think monitoring that data is key, and I'm happy to hear that it's being monitored and then reviews and actions are taken based on that. And then I assume you're circling back to look at that again.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that you are monitoring and looking for is reflective overall in the academics. And what I'm saying is a tight shift on paper with your checkoffs that to be justified with grade improvement at that site. And if you checked off negatively at a school and it's flourishing academically, then something's wrong with your template.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm going at Bluffton High now and say, what do they look like? Then we look at their results and say, okay, is it matching what we have from a data standpoint? Those are the things that we,
And those are some of the tools we do give the executive.
Right. And yeah, we look at that and we look at the kids and what populations are being removed and all of that. I mean, we try to look at all aspects and make sure that we progress that,
Good. I just didn't want, I don't want to beat up on, this discipline thing, but I know people look at the hard discipline numbers and say, that's it. And there's a lot more to discipline than that.
And it's funny because my team, we were meeting on Monday and we just had that conversation around consistency of language and people really understanding what is discipline and how it should be looked at. And that's something that we as a team is going to be sharing with some of the in our academic cabinet meeting as well. I have some conversation because you're right. People look at it differently and look at it just one aspect of it when there's so much more involved.
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
In terms of that 100 and it was 199.
Yeah.
Yes.
How much of that 199 students? How much of those students are SPED students?
So if they're special education students, they do not have their discipline plans addressed through the MTSS process. We make sure that the schools do that through the IEP process. So they won't be included in that 199. They have their own behavior intervention plan and their behavior goals or issues are addressed through the IEP goals and objective and or a behavior intervention plan.
And so where would we find that information at?
I can get that for you. So are you asking what is the number of students with disabilities with behavior intervention plans?
Yes.
Okay.
I have just a comment that I'd like to make.
And
Oh, Mr. Smith? Did you have one more question?
in terms of me, yes, I do have a question. And with all of those plans that we're talking about today, based upon them getting a actual contract, what does that look like before the contract is issued? What is that process?
So think about behavior intervention plans the way that we would do students with the academic side, right? If we identify them through our universal screener, the team sits down then and meet and talk about what deficits they're saying the teacher has to bring all this data to the table, right? How many infractions they have, what are attendance, because sometimes we know attendance impacts those as well. And so the MTSS, the school team, will sit around the table, talk about those challenges, where these behaviors are occurring. Are we seeing them? So they're very guided questions that they need to answer. And based on that information, then they put an intervention that will help improve that behavioral outcome for those individual students. And then they have to continuously collect data on those interventions and meet phase after about 8 weeks to determine if what they're doing with the kid is showing an improvement, right? And that's where, like Ms. Robine said, that data plays a big part in it. So there's constant school teams meeting to discuss those plans. So it's not like they shouldn't just write these plans and leave them. They have to be implemented. So people within the school are identified as those persons who are doing the particular intervention and or monitoring of the behaviors, or even the check-in, check-out. We want to make sure that every kid feels safe, that they have an adult they can go to. I'm really looking at our mentoring piece as part of that process.
Thank you. I just had one thing that occurred to me. I was at the Hilton Head High School Student Advisory Committee meeting yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And the culture in that school and in a year has really turned around. Those kids are engaged. They're excited about being at Hilton Head High School. There's a positive energy. So my thought as I was sitting there is you have 15 students here who all are advocates for Hilton Head High School and what it stands for. How do we harness them to speak out against the vaping and those types of things, to be the student ambassadors? And how do we include, to me, that would be a great discipline intervention, because these kids, as I sat there yesterday at Hilton Head High School, it was a very inclusive group. And they were all, and I could feel it. I could feel the difference in the school as I walked around before and after the meeting. It was different. So harness that to get these kids to be those peer counselors that say, hey, we're not vaping in our bathrooms. We're keep that. That's just something to think about.
Yeah, sure.
Colonel Geyer?
It says here that February 2022, we hired 2 hearing officers. I don't recall that.
2 part-time hearing officers, yes.
Who were they?
They are, you would ask me their names. One is an attorney, Wendy, you remember their names? I don't want to.
HALA, she moved here from somewhere in the Northeast, and then the other general, is that Mr. Lorenzo?
No,
Begins with the M.
Mendoza.
Mendoza.
Mendoza. as
retired law enforcement officer.
enforcement and did investigation. And we thought it was better
Yes.
to have somebody that's totally from the outside, who's
Independent.
unencumbered, to be able to make a fair, just decision.
Because the last time we had 2 hearings.
Yes.
It was.
Yes,
That's right.
and that's what
Yes.
made it
That
a
was,
change.
yeah, we just, it's much
Yes.
better.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions on only 13?
Yes, in terms of, the reason why I asked my question is because, I've had some parents that have asked me, how do we come to in terms of making it quick, how do we come in terms of putting the kids on the contract? And I've heard what some of you, what you've said, but not in the terms of what they are afraid of is that what those kids have done was those kids have put a target on their back. So my question is, what is the process of rehabilitating them in terms of making sure that that does not happen, and how do we get them back in, as I say, I don't want to say general population, but how do we get them back in the regular flow of things once they've been entered a contract?
So again, that is going to go back to the school and the interventions they have in place, because the behavior contract is different than the plan. But yes, the school should be really working and giving the students strategies in order to deal with whatever behaviors that got them there, right? As well. So that's something that we can speak to again with administrators about, making sure that they're having good sound practices, and that kids have a sense that once they are working with the schools with this, that they can come off of these contracts as well.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm looking for more of a specific, different answer in terms of, we have BMS's behavior people who we send to get certain training to be able to deal with these types of kids. And so I also know that they write down what they do and how they, some of these situations. So I'm looking more of a process of walking them back in terms of their training and their specialties as a not being home, but especially as in their actual positions. How are they navigating their time and focusing on these kids to get these kids to be able to be in a regular setting and to be successful? I mean,
So what?
That's pretty much that is their job. And so I'm trying to figure out, how are we actually utilizing them, not asking them for a task analysis, but also how are they being an integral part of this project?
So yeah, so that's a good question. I didn't include that. So with the BMSs, one of the things that they do, they're meeting consistently and working. We have now what we have, I'm looking for my notes, a BMS manual that is in draft format, where they clearly outline their responsibilities. So at school, say Beaufort High School as a BMS, what they should do is, once they have identified some students, a BMS works with them just, to, whether it's just a check-in or to provide certain strategies. So they document on those kids and they work with them for a certain period of time. And they do document that, and they're required to document and put that into our Enrich system, where it will always be there as well. So there's been, Dr. Skies has done a really good job this since he's coming on, working consistently with the BMSs, providing some training with them and having them develop the BMS manual about their roles and responsibilities and how they work with students in the schools, so that the use of those professionals are more robust than I would say probably had been, to your point, Mr. Smith.
Mel?
That is essential in terms of contracts, for the students. Pass with contracts. They got to the limit where you got to be placed in a contract, and the contracts outline primarily outline simply what their needs are, what you have to do now to stay here. That's basically what it is. And the BMSs, and you're right, they could be very much engaged to support that student. If it's just like you said, check in with me every morning. Let me see how it went yesterday.
Yeah.
The awkward thing is all of the staff members know that he's on contract and is continually monitoring him back, at least first to honor your contract. Then after honoring your contract, hopefully that smooth transition back into the norm, because if you showed up to class every day on time for 2 weeks, part of the contract, then that's a start to handling the classroom. So that's the way that's the way that contract works in terms of my experience with contracts. But yes, every hand on deck in terms, because everybody who's involved with this student know he's on contract, and it shouldn't be a pressurized thing for him. It should be an accommodation that he, embraces, and that's where the gray area is. If it's pressure, some teachers, you're on contract, and and show up, as opposed to head charge, So that's what we're looking for, and that's an important question, the engagement.
Yeah.
Parents are a crucial part of this as well.
Absolutely.
Most of this on the contract.
Colonel Guy?
I went and visited Bright Choices and happened to run into Dr. Skaggs and talk to him about this exact process that you mentioned, Will. And I was very impressed by the breadth and depth of his process, as you said. And I strongly recommend that we schedule an agenda, have him come in and tell the full board exactly the answer to your question about that process. Because I think it's really a step in the right direction. It's much more than I've seen in the past. It's been done there. That was a very good point.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
comment. The opportunity of having a student service officer and then having the director of student services themselves it is now the BMSs are receiving extensive training, guidance, right? That was a dismantled division that was absorbed into another division, which was not able to be operating. Having that back, very different tempo. The second comment, and it'd be new for Dr. White, because this was something as a result of the talent development conference we sent people to. You asked about something innovative. One of our conversations within our team, we'd like to collaborate with student services, is how many of our children at Bright Choices really are GP. And using the NAGLIERE, which is a logic test. So we're going to want to reach out to student services. That was it's in infant development conversation, but let's really look at that type of data and what we are missing, as well as our adult ed students who leave early. It's a 30-minute exam. If that was part of that exit process, so we could be better at our processing, because those are two legs on the pipeline that I think we're missing. So I know it's new for you to hear that right now, Doc, and I do apologize, but you brought up something. What are we looking differently? We were having that conversation academically to see how we could work and help improve. So I think there's a shift in mindset within the district as well.
I think, I can see that over time.
Yeah.
Will's just thought about the BMSs being a lot more engaged. That's an element of that contract that sometimes is missing. I didn't know he was on the contract. How did you not know? It went on routine when they made the contract and was not alerted. That kind of process now is being covered. So, I'm anxious for where we're going.
Any other questions about OE 13? So we will need a motion for OE 13.
Chair, that we present OE 13 to the full board with a recommendation for approval.
I'll second that.
Any,
Acceptance.
yeah. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Middleton, I.
4-0, okay. So are we, clarify, are we putting this in consent agenda or are we gonna have it presented?
A motion.
But you can motion it to go
Oh,
on
yeah.
consent, or you can, it's up to you.
Committee.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
It's up to you all where you want it to go.
so we'll, Dr. White, we'll put it on it'll be on the agenda for the 13th. And we'll ask you to just run through this executive summary, making the correction, like the 99 student behavior. Okay,
Okay. All right.
thank you.
You're welcome.
OE 14, learning environment treatment of students.
Right. So OE 14, some of, obviously with discipline and some of the things that we have put in place will really contribute to that positive and safe learning environment, right? So you'll see a little bit of repetitiveness here, but one of the things that I wanted to point out for this one is really making sure that staff behavior, they're governed and they go through a lot of training for safe schools around things like staff conduct and student boundaries. Also on FERPA, making sure that we are not collecting unnecessary information on students and that we are holding them to the highest confidentiality. And they're required to do that annually. So those are that's some of the things that we are doing there that we've done consistently. And this OE really speaks to a lot of the divisions. I feel human resources, operational services, student services, and instructional services, we all work together around creating that positive school environment, and it really hits all of the parts of the district as well. We also provide training opportunities to ensure that Dr. Skaggs is really doing a good job of making sure schools understand trauma-informed sensitive practices. We know a lot of our students and adults to come from heavy trauma, whatever that may be for them. So really looking at supporting staff development, how we create that learning environment. And someone mentioned earlier families, right? So collaborating with students and families as well. And that is done, we're bringing in some of our community partners that as we're monitoring and reporting, we're really watching the data again, or gaggle and see something, say something when it comes to bullying and inappropriate messages that students may put out there. And media's picked up as well, but working with our community partners and making those referrals for them and interventions that are beyond our scope of practice as well for our students. And with that, and even our agencies like Department of Social Services and mental health providers and DJJ to ensure that if our students need that level of intervention and support, that we work collaboratively with them too, and to ensure that they come back into the appropriate learning environment. And that will be defined by what is important, what is appropriate for that particular student as well. And that's it. Any questions about that?
Any questions about OE 14?
Yeah.
Mr. Campbell?
I am concerned as always with the reactive approach to creating a social environment that feels accommodating. I'm concerned that we don't have anything in here that's engaging parents in a positive sense when we're talking about creating this environment for students. You know, most of the stuff here is reaction to some kind of bell whistle that you saw or heard from a student. But what are we doing to develop a positive, like she said, she saw yesterday, positive environment of the school where the children become the whistlers. Children become the ones that tell us that this child's got something, a problem that you need to know about. Because if we're looking for adults to find it in these places here, it's almost too late. So that, I don't know the answer to it, honey, and I'm not suggesting that you have an answer to this, but that's something that we may want to look at, and it does require some thinking that's not generally, templated. And I'm sure individual schools might be doing some things themselves, but we still got the umbrella here, and even suggestions of, some things from the district that schools have to do might work,
Okay.
I'm thinking back 4 years ago when we came on this board. We didn't have these kind of discussions.
No,
I can't imagine us not having a student services now. I mean, all that we never got around to this level of detail. And I don't know how this,
it functioned.
how that was functioning here.
So it's not.
It is amazing when I think back of what we dealt with 4 years ago.
Let's say we're on the right.
Right. We ain't there yet.
No, we're on the right.
We're on the way to there.
Create something great.
And when we're looking at this OE 14, it has 4 components to it.
Yeah.
Maintain a climate that is characterized by support and encouragement for high student achievement. That is, to Mr. Campbell's point, maybe the next thing that we kind of think about or see what's, how we can move forward with it. The other 3 are all addressed in this, with the evidence that you gave us, support staff efforts to address unruly student behaviors, to work in partnership with parents. And that's a lot of this training right here. Ensure that all confidential student information is proper. That's in this training. Provide equal educational opportunities, safe, that's in the training too. So it's that number 1 that is maybe one that moving forward, how do we capture what's out there so that others can?
I think Dr. White is being shy on the approach that her division is doing with the work that's happening through Derek Skaggs and the collective efficacy and language development. Those are the languages you hear coming from presentation, professional development. So I think she's being very modest at the approach, which she wrote right here. I have to share that, because those are the language that her division is walking in that pathway. I know ourselves, we're working with some consultants with a few schools, just putting some things in place to help with single school culture. I know you said some trainings, but very modest at the work that they're doing. I have to share that.
Well, I echo Colonel Geyer. I mean,
Yes.
work is getting done. That
Yes.
has been
Yes.
ignored for.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's documented too. I mean, you've got not only what's being done, we got our fingers on what's being done,
Yeah.
which is important. Like
And what
you
needs to
pointed
be
out,
done.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Now you can look and say, hey, we got all this. How do we top it off? How do we get to the next point? Yeah. I'm all about creating the best, not just something. Yeah.
So you're reading for Beaufort tomorrow?
Yeah. Miss Middleton, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, ma'am.
All right, anyone else?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Smith?
In terms of boundaries and I'm still concerned that in terms of those about sometimes how we engage students with things that may happen off campus or may happen in how we allow law enforcement and other people to question students. And we had to create a process there. And I believe at this time, I believe, with just from just hearing different things that it sounds like that's something that needs to be addressed from the district level, not at the school level, because we have to make sure that we have something that where it's not a say something. It's a no. There's a standard in this district. There's certain things that we don't do. That's one of them. And so I still kind of hear sometimes hear different parents and different things with those kind of complaints. And to me, that's a part of the governance is that we know that we don't allow certain people to come on campus and question our kids and pull our kids and have those conversations. So I'm still concerned about that. And I think that
jurisdiction issue we can't
touch.
No. Yeah, actually, no. Our officer does not have the right when the kid is in our care to come on campus. No, you have school law or street law. He does not have the right to come and question a minor in our care without the parent's consent. And we can't. And to me, we cannot allow that to happen because we open ourselves up for the lawsuit. We open ourselves, and so therefore, that is something that we need to make sure that that's not happening. And I think that's almost something worth putting in writing. That there's a process. The parents must be called. There's no in between. Or you leaving it like, well, there's nothing in the books that say how does that look? Right, protocol, right. There you go. Yeah, there's some type of protocol in terms of our governance and this that needs to be in place. Want to come before destruction, and I think that we've been warned enough, and I've had some calls, and it's something that we need to just say. I think it's time that we go ahead and put it in black and white. This is from a district level. This is the protocol in terms of that.
Wendy, can you look up the legal constraints on that? I know in Pennsylvania, a police officer came to my school. They had the right to question students. It was, yeah. So yeah.
Confirming as a courtesy.
It's a courtesy to call the parent, but they didn't have to have parents' permission for them to come in and talk to. We're talking elementary school. I'm talking fifth graders.
I believe something different than that. I believe
that's not
the parental. I believe the parental. You cannot question a minor without. I'm almost certain that you cannot question a minor without their parents' consent.
That's what we're going to find out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm almost certain of that.
Yeah, because schoolers are 18. We would not need parental consent for that for 100% sure.
Yeah, and that's a little different.
Okay, so to his point, I think that there should be a process in place of how that engagement takes place. That somebody's following the steps.
Do you think that risk?
I don't know that lands in this.
Yeah, I don't think ladies in this. Yeah, it doesn't. Yes, it means to say
Security and safety.
yes.
For some of
Yeah.
us.
I don't think
Well, I thought it in terms of, well,
yeah, that's where I think that.
That could be brought up in one of these. Safety.
You need a motion?
Yes, we need an emotion for this.
Madam Chair, I move that we send OE 14 learning environment harassment treatment of students to the full board with a recommendation of approval.
Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 It's 4-0. Okay. Now, the last thing on today's agenda is discussion of future topics. I do want to remind our committee, we do have a meeting next week to finish up things from this year. And two of us will be transitioning off this committee because we will no longer be on the board. So the academic committee will look different. Any future topics
Beyond these, beyond the
Beyond-
next week.
beyond the next meeting? That's on our agenda. Next meeting.
When is the next meeting? December sixth.
December 6th.
Okay.
Tuesday.
I
Yep.
We had, a list of faculty ratios.
Yeah.
And there's more exploration of data about how our teachers are staffed at our different schools and the experience level of those teachers. The data that we had was a macro data. Now it's time to go down a little bit into the micro part of that data to say, for example, what's the average experience level at each school? Teacher experience. But I think you get where I'm going on this. It's a real data analysis of our staffing.
But the data points are outside of my division.
We have to get it from HR.
So what I'm sidebar writing here
Yeah.
is the staffing component is finance and the experience. component is-
That's, you're right.
Right,
So
so,
it's just something that should be
yes,
brought to get HR to get the
the
data.
operation.
And then we come back.
Yes.
Oh, you're good.
Because then we're
Good.
stepping, yeah, I do
Good.
apologize.
It's HR is, yeah, is that operations? HR.
Yes, it is operations.
It is not, yeah, because those data points, we don't have any access. to.
Right,
Right.
right.
Sorry.
You know, where you put your staff with, et cetera, et cetera.
From what I have access to now.
I haven't.
You try to ignore it. The principal doesn't.
Hey, there's something else?
Going from what you see. So, I mean. If you
Because
got,
the other component to ask was retention.
yeah, you say, want to know, yeah, like,
Yeah.
veteran teachers,
That would be-
that are good,
Right.
teaching the
Right.
larger numbers and the most needy, et
Yes.
cetera, et cetera. I mean, that seems to be something that.
Like,
teams should know.
Pull up the attendance.
Yeah.
the attendance of staff and can students.
Another probably better issue is we haven't been given a kind of a overview of instructional review results. You know, we
Oh, the IRs.
Yeah.
IR results, we've now had that now for a little more than a year. So what have we found? What are the metrics?
So we could do the big rocks.
Big
The
rocks,
SWOT analysis.
yes,
Compare that.
yes.
And we can key it and do a
Yeah.
presentation of that. We can-
Before that goes to the full board.
Yeah,
Yeah,
We're putting a lot of emphasis on that, and I know there's been results, but it hasn't been quantified.
Next question, so, well, I guess Carla and Angela. The new board, the new committee.
Yeah, it would be a good, really good thing for the,
What's
for
what's
the
gonna
new,
point that?
that'd be a perfect thing to start.
Start that needs of.
Yeah.
well, the chair always appoints the committee,
Okay.
so.
So how are you
Yes.
analyzing the topic? So what would be the topic?
I just want to ask a point of clarification,
Yeah.
if I may, Robin. Would it be the IRs for this year?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we could maybe give a second part of that, since the second IR cycle will happen in February.
Right.
So we can give you that quantifiable component at that point. I would think.
I would just cut IR results,
Yeah, thank you.
and then they can structure it any way they want.
Right, thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Middleton, did you have anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else?
If I may,
No.
yes, just something to think of, that have come up next week. Just to think of it, we have 2 graduations. Battery Creek will be under construction. It was not when we had calendar to the level that they're gonna have construction this summer. So we did have a request for their graduation to come in earlier. So I'll bring that up again on the sixth. I just want to give a.
The graduation earlier.
Yes, yeah, because they need to take possession. So we spoke with the principal. Nothing has gone public at all. We're looking at the June 2nd, which is a half day, which is when that graduation for that evening.
Is that a Friday?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And then that would allow us to move Whale Ranch earlier. Both those principals are on standby till we go through academic committee. I just wanted to think those are the only two for consideration, so I could then take it to the board
What's
as
the
well.
purpose of earlier?
Well, because Battery Creek, which who is the aide, they'd like to take possession earlier from facilities. Or they're on a very tight schedule. So they felt that they can get it here, they could start immediately that week and take possession of the school. Parts of the buildings, with the exception where teachers are still packing up. They have a lot of construction still happening. Campus.
But the actions happen. Football field, not an actual building.
Last year, Brother Creek had graduation.
Down.
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 So, but you're just saying they want to get it way as opposed to where.
Right.
How.
We'll probably have on campus, but
Yeah, probably because construction equipment and stuff too, moving in big equipment, I don't know.
they're asking.
And all of that.
Yeah.
I was assuming that they're gonna have it back out there. If they're right.
That was not a point of conversation at all. At all. Now that you brought it up, I will confirm.
Yeah.
I will confirm.
Well, I think. Well, okay, we're probably not supposed to be having this.
Yeah,
Right. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So, motion to adjourn?
Who?
Okay, we will see you next Tuesday.
Yeah.